Welcome to Web3 and Me, presented by FLOLiO. I'm your host, Jeremy Weber. On today's show, I'm going to be joined by Ephi from the Pixlverse team. We're going to dive deep into Pixlverse, what they're building in their metaverse, how, you get involved in it. We're going to walk through the Pixl Pets, how to build a team, all that good stuff. Before we get going, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and most importantly, head over to FLOLiO.com, link your account, check out your account valuation, all for free. Check out our browser extension and do this so I can keep my job and keep making these mediocre videos. So with that all being said, we got that out of the way. I'm going to bring on Ephi. Ephi, thank you for joining me this morning here, afternoon where you are. How's it going today?
Hi, dude. Happy to be here. This is an exciting one for me. I love your show.
I appreciate it. We try to bring on a diverse array of people, and I've been wanting to get someone from the Seals Pixlverse team for a while now. So why don't you give a little bit of background on your time in the NFT space, getting involved with Sappy Seals, Pixlverse, all that good stuff?
Yeah. I'm pretty new gen to like the crypto NFT space. I joined maybe 10 months ago, but I came straight like crashing into a team of people who'd been here for years. And I went through like a crazy experience of just leveling up through the understanding. Like, oh, okay, so everything's a Ponzi. Oh, okay, so some things aren't. Some people are really trying to. It like, and I got swept away by like the techno optimism and like the idea of like the future of GameFi being in this space, the future of just gaming in general.
What drew you to the Pixlverse Ponzi then, of all the Ponzi's you could have chosen from?
WAB is just the best Ponzi salesman that you could possibly imagine. No,
no one sells a Ponzi better than the Sappy Seals community. That's for damn sure.
That's for damn sure indeed. They'll get you.
They'll get you. Okay, so you had some experience with WAB in the past. You guys met through esports.
Yeah. We were both high-level players in a couple of games. I played professionally in a game called Brawlhalla for a couple of years. So did my co-lead designer Daiku. We came from that path, and then Web pulled us in because he knew that we had game design backgrounds, and that we had a really analytical approach to games. So he pulled us in to sort of, with this spark of an idea in his head, to try and take it forward.
Okay, so he had this idea for Pixlverse, and then you and Daiku kind of came in and began to bring it to life.
Yeah, it started as something really small, and then it just expanded outwards and outwards. And that's kind of been like the story of Sappy Seals and the Pixlverse as a whole is kind of like, hey, let's build this thing. Oh my God, people love it. We have this community. Maybe it can be bigger. Maybe it can be bigger. And then realizing slowly, step by step, suddenly we're playing on the biggest stage there is. Let's really develop and push something that we never, at the beginning, we never dreamed we'd be able to. It started as like, the idea of the Pixlverse started as like a Club Penguin, but for the Seals. And we thought, you could bring in all the pudgy, cute Arctic friends into that and have like a little NFT Disneyland with games and a token attached to it. And then that just expanded out. Why lock it to cute PFPs or just like the Arctic? Why not have a world that people can build in? And then we went through this step-by-step process of looking around saying, so we want to build a metaverse. This was mid bull run, like December, November, even earlier than that even. And we looked around at what everyone was doing in the PFP space, and you had everyone, like the word metaverse was at an all-time high. Everyone was looking at the sandbox. It just mooned, and you had Decentraland, Nifty Island going on in the background, and you went around kind of shopping to Bit.country as well. We went around sort of shopping to see, all right, if we want to build this like NFT community metaverse, who do we go to? And for everyone we approached, we kind of ran into the sense that the way that these kind of land-based models like the sandbox were set up, they weren't conducive to like actual development. And we started to develop this kind of understanding that what you're getting, I don't know, there's a project really early in Web 1 that had like, you would sell pixels on a screen as advertising space, and people paid, like advertisers paid per pixel for this one web page. This is early internet. And some of the pixels started going for a ludicrous amount of money, like 100K, $1 million. Like McDonald's bought some pixels just on this web page that's nothing but pixels. And it reminded me very much of what the sandbox map page looks like, where you're essentially buying land in this popular idea that you can then slap your logo on, and then maybe you'll build something in it under the constraints of their game engine, which, to be fair to Sandbox, is quite good. It is flexible, but there's just limitations. There's no way the sandbox would actually be able to provide developer support to each individual community or like interested party building in that space. So given that, and given the limitations, like not wanting to be locked to a wider token like sand or whatever, you know, everyone had one, we realized, okay, maybe we have to build it ourselves, and maybe this is something the NFT community can do together.
Okay.
And that's how it spiraled bigger and bigger, and we started talking and growing in size with speaking with partners, and they were experiencing the same things.
So that was kind of the central idea when you first, you know, when Web presented Pixlverse to you, you know, the three of you, him, and Daiku kind of talked about it. And that was like one of the core things that you really wanted to focus on. So I see on the Pixlverse website, you know, you're partnered with all these different communities. You got Llamaverse, Chubiverse, Cake Tapes, all these different ones. How did you all get involved, and what was sort of the collaboration like there?
I mean, it is exactly that story, in that we thought, why don't we ask other projects if they're interested in doing something like this? Like everyone at the same time had the same thoughts. We were thinking of the sandbox, we were thinking of Decentraland, but we'd speak to them, and the experts on those teams would come back and say, but it doesn't really quite work. And so it was really organic in that there was just this like decentralized shared sentiment between parties that this is not going to work for us in the long term. We need to potentially, you know, look into building this ourselves. And people loved the idea. And from us, our kind of value proposition was that, okay, we'll build the architecture, we'll build the platform, and hold us accountable if we start behaving in a way, you know, that's like sandbox. If we try to capture too much value, that's not what we're here to do. You'll have power in that, and we'll have a DAO model backing that to ensure that doesn't happen. But then let us use your IP, let us use your characters. You have these communities, these identities that you've created. Let's expand those in a game world. You know, every little PFE collection, if you go to their Discord, have stickers, right? And the stickers have characters, and they get used in memes, and you start to see like recurring faces, like mimetically in these communities. And we thought, why aren't like they're the perfect candidates to be made into like non-playable characters in a game world. And then not only that, but like we talk about land a lot. Well, what would Chubiverse's land look like in a metaverse if it weren't built in the sandbox? You know, would it be this like Candy Mountain Adventure Time inspired rainbows and chicken wings experience? And like they love the idea of that. So so did we. We think people would respond to it because it's really original creativity, and there's people behind these things.
So are all the different projects that you're partnered with building their own, you know, parts of the Pixlverse?
So that hasn't. It depends, because not every project is able to commit the same level of resources, or even wants to, and that's totally fine. So we've explored like, okay, do you want to build out something in this world with us, or have us support you in building that, or smaller kind of integrations like, all right, if we have a city, it's like if you imagine an MMO like World of Warcraft, you have a major city. Maybe there's a building or there's a region of that city that has, you know, buildings, characters from your universe. And not only that, but can we hook in like with it, like whatever tools you have, like Chubiverse has like the meme machine, can we bring that into the metaverse, have it accessible via the Pixlverse, and have some incentives around that, like token wise. But in terms of development, we're not quite at that stage yet, where we don't have an open source like an SDK, a standard development kit that we can just hand out to people and say build, build, build. When you're going about it how we are, like that's much harder to, like that takes a lot longer to do than, let's say, a sandbox SDK, where everything is, you know, everything is a cube, it's voxel based, and it's like Lego, and you can hand out a set of Lego to everyone, and they'll figure out how to build with it. For us, it's not quite so straightforward. We've got our own engine. Sorry, no, we haven't got our own engine, that's misspeaking, but we've got our own code base, and we're adapting it individually per partner, and we'll try and build out to this kit that we can say, yeah, eventually we're not going to vet our partners so well, because we're really focused on building this core experience where all the partners' worlds are, you know, coherent, they're fleshed out, they aren't just, you know, rubble where someone has not really built on it after being given a plot of land. After that phase of construction, we'll then expand outwards with an SDK and be able to just say, yeah, you can build, you can build, you can build. And that'll be a slightly different experience than where we're actually at with our current partners.
Okay, I just want to point out the seals have entered the chat. So things might get a little weird. Also, it would appear that you are quite beloved across the internet, sir. So I'm happy to be
Oh,
joined by such a famous person today.
oh,
So where are you in the development of this? And one thing that is really tough for a lot of the MT projects that I think you guys something you have going for you is that oftentimes people expect way too much too soon. And it seemed to me like the Sappy Seals community and the Pixlverse community and all your partners are very understanding of the fact that this is not a 3-month, 6-month project. This is like a multi-year endeavor. So how did you guys, what stage are you at in development, and where do you feel like you've gotten the most support from the community and been able to, set that precedent?
yeah,
Apparently they
yeah.
don't expect anything. So that's, when expectations are low, that's good.
Yeah, well, I hope you expect something. We can hold us to account more than that. But I think honestly we could have done better about communicating like expectations and roadmaps and
Okay.
deliverables. And I can say just for the seals that are listening is expect an update very in the near future in regards to the roadmap. It has changed in terms of the order in which we're going about things. And the key change that we've made is we've decided to prioritize Pixl Pets, which is we had this idea of this decentralized open world metaverse, which code-wise, programmatically and artistically takes a much longer time to build than this kind of what we called the flagship game of the Pixlverse, Pixl Pets. So if you imagine like an open world that's like the world you walk around in a Pokemon game, Pixl Pets is actually like the Pokemon battles that you would do within that, and everything associated like tournaments, challenges, dungeons, like the Elite Four, quote unquote. And the idea is that that's really the value add. You have the social aspect of a metaverse, which I think it's much more reliant on market conditions and just like the zeitgeist coming in at the right time. And right now, I don't think that would do very well. But something we can tangibly push in the market right now is Pixl Pets. We can put out a playable game with a functioning economy behind it. That's repeatable and will last, and we can continue to develop as we expand outwards to the open world and start integrating that originally like isolated game experience into an open world, which is a little bit like what Axie's doing with Axie Origins. They started with a core just that 2D game, and then they're building out as this land-based model. But ours is kind of designed for that from the get-go, as opposed to kind of being a pivot midway. And
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, where we're at in terms of Pixl Pets in that case is we're in internal testing, and we're hoping to have a build out to sort of quite exclusive ring of testers within the next month and a half, and then beyond that we'll be racing as fast as we can once we get our assets polished through towards a kind of like an alpha prototype that we can then let the community, significant holders, like get access to and really start developing this out in the open.
That's awesome. Yeah, it seems like so many of these projects promise games and they start to deliver something, but like it's not fun. And like, Dan, my co-host who's usually with me, we talk all the time that like these games need to be fun first and foremost. And that's not like an original idea we came up with, but I think it's awesome that you guys are gamers who got into this as opposed to like, like TradFi or, crypto guys who then were like, oh, I guess we should make a game. Like the game element was always at the forefront for you, which I think gives you a huge leg up.
We've 100% got to like, we're really lucky to have both sides of that equation locked down, because gamers can't design economies. They want the items, give me everything. And then understanding what necessary constraints need to be in place, that really comes from our two tokenomics guys, NFTZ and TrueDGen, who are fantastic. But yeah, you're right. Like fun first is the way. And if you're trying to kind of capture value and tokenize value, where is that value coming from? Is it coming from investors coming in and coming out? Do we have Ponzinomics going on? Or is that coming from a gameplay experience, which is then just being modified and tokenized and managed in that sense? And really that I'd say is probably the largest like slowing down factor, like the largest break on our train is figuring that out in terms of we've seen projects push an existing game model with a token slapped on top of it, and we've seen 99% of those claps, and then the other 1% just aren't released yet. So we'll see how they go. We've seen like on-chain games that are more like a gamified financial application. Those have been quite good. I mean, like the most basic simplified version of it was Wolf Game, which went viral in the space for a while, and then obviously collapsed because it was a Ponzi. But I do like what we have right now in the space. Just go to zoom out for a moment. Is we have this understanding that games and finance, they can't be mixed in a way where like you're just reusing a model from one or the other. You can't take a financial model and slap a game on, like a game skin on top of it, and have people play it consistently. I mean, that's what DeFi Kingdoms essentially is. And you can't take a game and just slap a token onto it because it's not built to support that. It needs additional constraints, and there's additional like principles and at play that will change the experience. And you hear people talk about the idea of like, I don't want my game to be like my playing of a game to be a job. And the kind of like work to earn models that have been coming out. There's so much going on, and what we have is a bunch of projects really trying to get the recipe of this new thing right. It's a new way of designing games, and it's a new way of doing finance. And every time we make an advance on like the game design side, we have to check that with the economic side, and then that whole system needs to be working. And then there's no way of truly testing it before it goes to scale, right? Before you push it to market and see if it survives under scale. So the theory and the principle needs to be just like rock solid all the way through. And if you have like that thought, well, I know I'm not really thinking about that too much, I'm hoping that's going to be okay, like that's just dangerous. You can't leave a stone unturned when it comes to this, because it's ridiculously easy to make a Ponzi just by accident. Like that's over half the products is well-meaning people who don't have the financial side of things on lock enough to avoid that, or financial people who don't have the game side things who can provide the fun and make an interesting experience.
Okay, so I want to pull up a question here from Colby. What other teams do you see as credible competitors and interesting projects in the P&E space with similar development timelines to Pixlverse?
I would say I think Treasure DAO on Arbitrum are doing something really interesting. They had this idea of a decentralized Nintendo where they'll have they have Magic, their token, which is it's kind of like what we're doing, except there is no connected open world. It's just it's just game projects by publishers that are kind of, I don't know how to describe it, and I don't know their internals, but they're sort of like partnered with Treasure DAO, and they can share users through the use of Magic, and their token flows in between those games. I think that's really cool, and you might see some projects drop out of that pick up a lot of attention in the near future. And then our other main competitors they're the ones who are kind of typically going for the model that's more like, this is a game and we're slapping a token on it, but the amount of industry power behind the design of the game and the creation of the game is just really high. So you'll have like ex-Riot Games employees working on projects like this one coming out like soon called Nyan Heroes. That game, it looks fantastic. It looks like a modern battle royale. It looks like better than Fortnite. And when something like that comes out, it's going to explode, even if it's not fundamentally the same thing that we're doing. It's going to kind of compete with us naturally. And in that sense, I would say one of our strengths is the kind of indie mindset we have to development. We very much recognize that we've come from the grassroots. We don't have this massive industry backing, though it's not inaccessible to us if we want to go in that direction. But there's like a legacy of development traditions in these companies like Riot, where they can push things out very efficiently, though they have certain. When you're working in a model like that, a traditional model, you face certain constraints. It's particularly like risk averse. There's an unwillingness to like push innovative ideas and try new things, and that's kind of where we see our advantage. So like an idea that I think people have mentioned a couple of times is like the idea of playing for pink slips. If you have NFTs and if you have a skill-based game, why can't you play for pink slips and have like trustless escrow to do that? And I'm like, yeah, like do that. You have to do it responsibly. You have to put enough checks and balances in place. It needs to be age gated. But that's that kind of stuff that's really using the technology. I feel like the industry power is not going to touch that stuff with a 10-foot pole until it's proven and tested in other areas. And that's kind of where we're in the space where we're able to take risks. We have the liberty of doing that if we believe they're the right thing to do.
Okay. So you obviously big background in gaming. I'm assuming you have a lot of friends who are gamers as well. The ones who are not involved in NFTs, crypto, anything like that, what is their response been when you've talked to them about this? Do they get it? Like, 'cause it seems like gamers either there's no like middle ground. It seems like gamers either love the idea or absolutely loathe the idea. Like, where do your friends fall? What are their pushbacks on it? What's their hesitation?
The real like it depends on if they're not if they've played RuneScape or not. If they played RuneScape in the past, they're like,
Okay.
oh, I get it. This makes perfect sense to me. Or if the World of Warcraft sometimes as well. But the vast majority, as we can see, the vast majority of the sentiment coming out of gamers is this is trash. What is
Okay.
this? Get it away from my games. And it's a bit tricky to reconcile that.
What part of that do they think is trash? Just the overall concept of
Yeah,
NFTs?
well, I think indicative of that attitude is a lack of engagement with the actual ideas, right? It's
Okay.
that comes from a gut reaction based on the, I don't use the word normie, but kind of, like typical traditional understanding of what these things are from an uninformed position. So if you're not in crypto, if you're not in NFTs and you hear about, I mean, if you look at the space from the outside, what do you see? You see scams, you see rugs, you see all these things, and that's the news also pushes that.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you have this idea of the gaming space is this is the thing. This is crazy bullish if you think about it long enough, but there's like a fundamental distrust that's been built up over the last decade and a half between players and games companies, games publishers, creators, in terms of how those games are looked after. Like, I'll use the example of Ubisoft, for example. Like, there was a string of cases where Ubisoft released a non-blockchain game. They would sell cosmetics for it. They would monetize the art, like, absolutely to the maximum extent. And then they would basically, the game would fail. It wasn't producing enough revenue within a 6-month time span. And then they would shut the servers down. And that money that was paid into it, which was already so heavy with microtransactions and value extraction from the player to the company, just disappeared, right? They lost all their assets. And that's been a common experience, that there is just a growing mistrust between, in this relationship of publisher, developer, and player. And it mirrors a lot of what we see in like the DeFi space and the narratives behind DeFi between, like individual versus the bank as a central institution. So like, but what's happened is people see NFTs and crypto, they see the kind of money, like that it relates to money, and they assume, or they rightly assess that this could be used by the same companies that were fucking them over, excuse my language, in
worries.
in Web2 to just leverage that again. Like, oh, there's more money in this. This is just a way that they can extract more value from me. So I don't want anything to do with it. And I think, I mean, it's tough because I empathize with the position, but it's not what the tech is there for, and it's not what has to happen. And it's important, I think, for everyone on our team to keep in mind, and we do this often, is just to renew that if we aren't here trying to push things in a more ethical direction, and the same thing why we're so supportive of projects we believe are doing the same, then it will just that's what will happen. That's the alternative future if people aren't trying to do the right things with this. And that's really motivating for me personally.
Yeah, you're fighting this battle on two fronts of like the bad actors in the space and people you want to bring in who would be, great members of the community, whatever, who have, this not unfounded belief that, they're going to get dicked over again. So it's a really tough situation to navigate. It seems like you guys are doing a hell of a job at it. A couple other questions I want to pull up here from people watching. Thank you for everyone putting your questions in. I appreciate it. Can you play this game without a seal or a Pixl Pet?
Yeah.
Would you be able to?
Absolutely. We're following a kind of like free to access, free to play kind of idea in that sense. We don't want to gate anyone who wants to play the game. As you get further into it, you might be incentivized to purchase something, but to actually access and like enjoy the experience, not at all. The way that would work is if you don't have a pet, you should be able to like lease a pet from others. So if people have unused pets that they're not actively using, they can put them up to be borrowed by you, and then what will happen is those players would take a commission on anything that you were to earn while using those pets. So you still have access. We're trying to make that process as seamless as possible. So if it's your first time logging onto the game, there'll be a large pool of pets just ready to be borrowed that you can just take. Oh, I want this one, this one, this one, this one, and then you're ready to go. then for the avatars, so like the idea of the PFP partners would be that if you have a seal, then you will be a seal in the world. Your pet trainer will be a seal. If you have a chubby, then it will be a chubby. And the way we're getting around that is that we'll provide like base untraded models for each community. So there'll be like a chubby wall that doesn't have traits, that is not technically in the collection. You'll have a llama that's just a plain llama, a seal that's just a regular seal, and those will be selectable for free-to-play players.
Okay, very cool. Are you working with any big Web2 game companies? It doesn't sound like it, but I wanted to ask that anyway.
No, currently not. We have connections with some, but there isn't too much of a reason. So like there's a pattern with kind of Web2 companies that either they've locked everything down, they're making no statements about crypto, and it's because they're doing something on their own that they don't want to tell you about yet, or they're in the space already and they've already garnered a lot of negative attention and they've done things that you wouldn't really want to be involved in. We have like what we're really on the lookout for, and of course we have a connection with Infinite World, is that they are Web3 based, and they're already bought into the vision of Web3 and where this is going, and they have access to Web2 resources like game studios, etc. That is probably going to be very useful for us in the long term. But in truth, it's not necessary. So long as you've got the vision, it's not that hard to build things like this. It's really organizing everyone and then coming up with the right way to do it.
Okay, very cool. So I want to transition to Pixl Pets a little bit. I'm gonna pull up the Pixl Pets page on OpenSea. We're gonna do a little screen share. I kind of want you to talk me through, if I were just getting started today and I wanted to create a Pixl Pets team, how would I go about doing that?
Right. So for context, so like every Pixl Pet at the moment has 4 moves, and you can see those moves listed under the image. It's got cosmetic traits, and then the card itself has a rarity. You'll see some of the borders around the cards have a different color. The for gameplay reasons for building the team, there's a set of information you need. The most important is the moves themselves, combination of moves. But this is where things get tricky. So we haven't fully released what all the moves do yet. We've got our internal list, but we've been pretty careful about not releasing it because we expect it to change. Basically, it's still in development, it's in testing, and we're going to be making changes to it for the next month or so before we reach this point where we're like, okay, here's what all the moves do. And at that moment, once you get that list, people will be able to theory craft about these moves sound like they'll do well together. This makes sense. And then not only that, further on from that, we're going to be launching breeding, where you can breed 2 of your pets to produce a new one, like of a lower generation pet, so it'll be lower rarity. When that happens, we'll also launch the stats for every existing pet. So right now, the pets don't have their stats attached to them, and then the moves, you don't actually have an explanation for them. So the best way to be kind of buying or selling or trading pets right now is to look at the rarity of the moves. There's 5 tiers of move rarity that the community have figured out. They've made an amazing spreadsheet for it. I think you can also find it on our Gitbook, which is gitbook.thepixlverse.com, I think. That might not be right. Double check, but you can find it on Google.
So scrolling through, I'm going to look at some of these. So you got like one with the Thunder Slash here.
Yes, yeah. Ooh. So that's a deity pet. That's like a legendary pet. And it's the only one with Thunder Slash in the game. So there's a little, like, this is stuff I can't talk too much about because it's secret lore stuff we'll get to. But
really, number 1 rarity rank. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. If you're shopping around for a pet now, what you're looking mostly at is just rarity of the card, rarity of the moves, because when breeding comes out, the move rarity is going to be particularly important in terms of you're increasing your chance at propagating out rarer moves, which are going to create pets that are valued more highly, and it'll be harder for people to get access to those moves if they want them on their team. So yeah.
So I'm going to take this opportunity real quick to once again pump what we're building over at FLOLiO. So if you're looking at the screen right now, we have our browser extension for OpenSea that overlays our rarity ranks onto the screen here. We've compared them to other sites. They're pretty similar. We believe that ours are just as good, if not better. So just another plug for the free FLOLiO browser extension. So check that out.
The trait floor thing is pretty handy.
Yeah, we have that. We're going to have fair market value calculations for a lot of projects coming through. we got it for Sappy Seals too, with the trait floor and the rarity rank and everything. So yeah, we're trying to build out as many like free tools to help people, onboard into the space, have a better understanding, make better decisions, all that good stuff. So okay, so the moves are going to be what's key. How about the different elements? Like, are there going to be different benefits there that you can talk about?
Yeah,
When
yeah.
breeding rolls around, you're gonna have to breed 2 pets of the same element, or can you do different elements?
No, so when it comes to choosing your element, it's more of a like personality choice. So if you
Okay.
if you think about, like Avatar: The Last Airbender, like the 4 elements, fire, fire, earth, wind, water, and or air, water, and what they represent, what they mean, traditionally, historically, and then also just in a modern sense, like fire is typically more aggressive. You're going to see fire pets and fire moves relating more to dealing damage as much damage as possible relatively quickly, setting pets on fire, destruction, that kind of thing. Whereas water will be more reactive. It'll have sort of more healing, buffs and debuffs, and like focus more on altering play and being responsive. If you just think into what like the element might represent, and then what you feel represents you, that's the best way to pick what elements you'd like. Though I'd recommend not going with a single element team. I'd recommend mixing things up. You're going to see we're trying our best to make sure that, well, no, we're doing quite well, I think, at making sure that whichever way you'd like to play it, if you just say, no, I'm an earth guy, and like we call them earth, like the earth maxis, they only want to play earth, that's what they care about, that will be a totally like viable strategy in the game, compared to someone who's like, no, I want to use all 4, or I like wind and like air and water more than anything.
Okay. So would you recommend then, like, if you're trying to get the most out of it, having a team, consisting of all 4 elements?
Theoretically, to get the most out of it, you'd need 2 of each element so that you could breed the same element pairs, fire and fire, and then also fire and any of the other elements. So you need 8 pets to have a full range of breeding.
So that's where the Ponzi comes in then, is that we need 8 pets. I'm just kidding. So I was always a water guy in Pokemon, and I'm curious if like most people revert to their original like Pokemon choice when initially building their team. Like the people who are diehard, Charmander, like, oh nope, I got to get a fire pet. I got to have a fire team. Like that.
I literally reckon it depends entirely on whether or not you've watched Avatar: The Last Airbender, and if you have, it's like you're basing it off just like crazy spiritual stuff. And if not, then I think probably Pokemon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have more background in Pokemon than I do Last Airbender, so that was immediately like oh, I'm probably gonna get like some water pets because that's where I went there. Okay. We talked about roadmap changing. Is breeding still happening by the end of this month, or is that being pushed?
That's being pushed. It is.
Okay.
So two things about that is, one, so this relates to breeding very much so, which is the DeFi contracts. We had a set of DeFi protocols that we've announced to launch. Those are like functionally ready to be pushed, but we kind of have made the decision that like not to push them yet. It doesn't make sense given the market conditions, and it also doesn't make sense given the roadmap for breeding. So what we're likely to see is that DeFi will launch shortly before breeding does, to ensure that like there's enough pixel flowing through the ecosystem that breeding isn't capped in any way by like lack of token. Everyone has as much as they need to kind of ensure the proper velocity of the market. And then breeding itself. So we're basically like, we experimented with something. I want to think about how much I can say here. We had an idea of how breeding, like we would want to do breeding at the beginning. And then midway through, we had the opportunity to potentially push it into something much larger and much cooler. And what that idea was like generative crossbreeding. So this is something we're exploring. We haven't confirmed the direction 100%, but it's something we're in research and development, is that you'd have true generative crossbreeding, that if you took any pet shape, features, whatnot, and then any other one, it would algorithmically generate a third new pet. And we've looked into the feasibility of that and how deep we'd have to go to then make sure that that works with a trait system, like a traditional NFT trait system. And that's in research and development. But the kind of that, if that can be achieved, like for reference, that's not been achieved in gaming ever. That would be a new thing. If we managed to do that, that would be awesome. Like that's kind of what people dream of when they have a Pokemon game. Like what would happen if you bred a Pikachu with a Miltank? Like what kind of abomination comes out? But like you can, if you optimize it well enough, right? You don't end up with an abomination. You end up with some really cool stuff. So that has that's taken up our attention for a while, and then everything else is basically done. Like the algorithm, the way we know we want breeding to work is down pat. We've written it out. It's looking good. It's just, can we do this really awesome thing? And then it's building out all the art to match that final direction, which is in like undergoing, like in process. So unfortunately, it won't be ready for Q2. And as I said, we will be releasing an update to the roadmap with what we're focusing on, which is more like the Pixl Pets combat and getting that tested out, playable. And then we should still see breeding, hopefully Q3, if not Q4. And yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, it's you mentioned the market conditions. It's really tough out there. It seems like a lot of projects, this is where a lot of them are going to drop off, is they were poorly managed. You know, have you had someone, like you said that you have, you know, the tokenomics and the crypto centered guys. So have you had someone kind of helping on the business end, making sure that you guys stay solvent, that you can weather, you know, a deep crypto winter, if that's what we're going into?
Absolutely, yeah. That was. I feel sorry for the projects that didn't, but yeah, we were very conscious of the fact that, like, do not hold the treasury in ETH, stable that. Let's make sure we've got everything, ensuring because a lot of the people we're hiring and we're working with don't come from crypto, right? You're looking for game developers, artists. They need a level of security that holding your treasury in ETH does not offer. You need to be able to ensure that, hey, if you're going to leave your job in the industry to come and work with us, we can ensure you 6 months employment, 12 months employment. And so it's always been a priority of ours to ensure that, like, the development can continue and we have more than enough runway to carry through things. So yeah, we're in a good position, but I will say that, like, it has changed how we're thinking about our, like, releasing deliverables, because it does seem like to launch into this market right now is just unwise across the board. Traction is low, engagement is low, people aren't willing to take risks or try new things, and just the general energy level of everyone is really low right now. And that said, we're not going to wait for perfect market conditions. I just think right now the momentum is in the wrong direction, and it will start to pick up, and then that's the perfect place to launch into, that upward momentum, because then we can build and we can keep building on top of that and hopefully grow out of the market into like, and scale.
You say the energy is down, but I gotta disagree, because like the seals are just out of their damn minds. Like I feel like this is where they're gonna thrive. Like when everyone else is in panic mode and the sky is falling, the seals are just gonna keep shit posting and memeing their way through it, and that's why they're gonna survive. So I got all
they
the
give
faith
me
in
the
the
energy.
world.
Yeah,
they do. They are the wind beneath my wings. That's for goddamn sure.
absolutely.
So you know, it's we were talking before the show that my introduction to the seals was through like some shit posting and copy pasta, and it just made me fall in love with the community. And that is one of the beliefs I have of why it's going to make it through, you know, this time, is that, like, it's so much fun to just go on Twitter and whatever and just like goof around with the seals, because they just, you know, they keep things in perspective. They keep it light even when everyone else is in doomsday scenario. So I can't downplay the importance of that enough.
Yeah, 100%. I couldn't be more grateful for the seals, for who they are in terms of being understanding, respectful, and then for having that kind of undying energy. They're such real people, with great stories, and they're really, like, there's an open environment, and it was quite, that was what shocked me the most about this. Is I came into, like, looking to build a game, and I feel like, you know, I found a community, and it can't be overstated that really is the case. And it's also really interesting because it's a different developer relationship than anything we've ever seen before. Like, with a community of vested interests behind it, there needs to be a level of transparency. The community deserve a level of transparency, and that's, like, there's forces at odds in there in terms of development, managing expectations, and the need for transparency. But in every way that we've tried to do it, it's gone well. It's kind of something that traditionally you just think couldn't be possible. But the maturity of the community has been phenomenal, and we look forward to just leveling up on transparency moving forward, and more being able to build in the open. So this is not a project delivered by 13 people, 20 people. It's by the 4,000 or whatnot and more.
Awesome. I think this is kind of a good place. I want to start to wrap it up. Any final thoughts you have? Anything you want to share, with the people watching, the Pixlverse team, the community, any of that good
Yeah.
stuff?
I would say about the current market conditions and the way everything's going right now, I couldn't express how cozy I'm feeling through it all. But like one of the main reasons for that I'd love to highlight is that in terms of what we spoke about with like the gamer and like the market we're trying to capture is gamers, right? And their impression of crypto and NFTs is highly negative. And I do not think that they would have been able to buy into the narratives that I still believe in about this space unless we were to go through this crash, until we had this kind of understanding that a lot of like malinvestment had happened and not resources were being handled poorly. Until we have this pullback and we start to be smarter about how we deal with it, I don't think it was possible to capture the gaming crowd. I think it was too see-through and too obvious how the majority of the space was acting, and that combined with the merge and the move towards proof of stake and the reduction of ecological concerns will lead to it's the catalyst that will lead to this changing of opinion that will then open up the market in the gaming side of things, which is what we're all waiting for if you're betting on GameFi projects.
So do you guys have then a strategy of how you want to try to appeal to the hardcore gamers and bring them into the NFT, crypto side of things?
Yeah. I think we have a couple of core principles and then we're still developing a strategy, but it starts with just having a clean slate as best as possible, having a clean slate and not having skeletons in the closet, being transparent. Two, it's having a product. So it's develop and attract attention where we can right now, which is people who are interested in the space, capture the gamers who are already here. And then once that's developed, keep developing, keep growing, and make sure we can continue enough momentum through development. It's not just build product, go silent for 2 years. It has to be a live product. And then as players begin to as attitudes tend to shift and you start looking over to the space, what do they look at? What do they see when they look over? We want them to see us. And as they do, we want to capture that. And I love what you're doing with like FLOLiO. Sorry, I can't pronounce it.
It's all good.
FLOLiO, yeah.
FLOLiO,
To in that providing tools, right, that make it more accessible, because that's something that 100% needs to happen. When you're designing games, you run into players doing all sorts of ridiculous things, but it's just because the UI didn't quite make sense to them, or the instructions weren't clear, stuck in ceiling fan kind of thing. It's very real, and stuff like this that make everything easier and accessible is crucial to the growth of this space.
Absolutely, yeah. You are way smarter than me in a lot of different ways. My goal here is just to try to help bridge the gap, because it is so. Also, I changed my PFP to a seal today, just so that we're on the same page. I was getting a lot of shit for that. Yeah, it was tough, getting into NFTs. I was so lost and navigating just the basic stuff, like navigating MetaMask and securing my assets and everything. So that's kind of what I'm working on, is trying to make it, dumb it down a little bit and make it less intimidating to jump in here. So I think there's a lot of great people in this space, and like you said, with these current market conditions, we're weeding out some of the people that weren't here for the long haul. I'll be the first to admit, I got into NFTs initially because I saw the monetary possibilities, but I've stayed around because of the fact that I enjoy the people I interact with on a daily basis here, and I just see so much potential. So I'm excited. It really is. It attracts a lot of good people, and the ones who are going to be here for the long haul have no problem weathering this storm that we're in right now, for sure.
Yeah.
All right, man. I really appreciate you coming on with me today. That was great. I learned a ton. I hope everyone watching did as well. Please, once again, it helps us a lot if you hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, check out some of our other content. It's not all going to be, with Ephi, unfortunately, because he's a busy guy, but we'll hope to have you back on in the future when there's some updates and some new stuff to talk about around Pixl Pets. And once again, head over to app.flolio, FLOLIO.com. Link your wallet for free. You don't even need to actually connect it. You can just copy and paste, see your holdings. I know not everyone wants to look at that right now. Check out our free browser extension. We are trying to put out a ton of great stuff for everyone to get the most out of their NFT experience. Any final words today, sir?
Thank you very much for having me. This was great.
Awesome. That was absolutely great. Thanks everyone for joining. For Ephi, for the team at FLOLiO, I'm Jeremy. Have a great day, and we will see you next time.